Okay, here we go. So welcome. Thank you very much, Lesley. Lesley.
No, Lesley Louise.
Lesley Louise.
First name Lesley, surname Louise, yeah.
I'm getting confused. You are the
Okay.
branch chair of the CIPD here in Gibraltar.
That's right, I am.
And it's fantastic to have you here to talk to us a little bit about well-being at work. For the Working Minds event here in Gibraltar. So I know you've worked in various settings, and obviously your work as a branch chair is also supporting other HR professionals. So how do you see the whole well-being at work? And there seems to be a whole change in how companies approach it, and increasing interest in that area. I mean, what do you see playing out?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think when I first started as CIPD branch chair, which was probably about four years ago, I think, the emphasis on well-being at work wasn't the way it is now. So in a very short space of time, really, we've seen quite a huge shift towards employers realising that looking after the employees' well-being actually is a benefit to a business. So it's not, in the end, when you talk to business people and you want them to do something, you have to talk about the money. You have to talk about how much it's going to cost and what the benefits are. And in order to get a businesswoman to make change, they need to see that there's a benefit for that. So as much as I'm always much of an advocate about the human side of it, and we need to look after human beings in business, you need to talk about the bottom line. And I think they're starting to realise that actually the benefit is there to the bottom line when they're looking after their staff. And I think that's a big change than where we were 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, that's fantastic, because I mean that was going to be one of my questions is whether you see that link playing out between people's well-being, how they show up at work, and then the bottom line for the company.
For sure there is, and it's an age-old thing, and I think I've always struggled with why people are not more aware of it. If your staff are happy at work, if they're happy in themselves, if they're productive, if they're happy with what they're doing, if they feel challenged at work, all of those things, then they will be more productive and they will do more for you in the workplace. And there is a direct correlation. It's been proven that people who are happy at work will work better and will stay longer. And when you invest time in them, they want to give something back to the organisation they work for. And it seems to have taken a little while for business to make that connect.
Yeah. I love the fact that you said that you also included, when people are challenged.
Yes.
Because very easily it can be the well-being at work can be perceived as, the sort of mollycoddling, softly sort of thing.
Yeah.
But actually
pink and fluffy, as I've been told numerous times. Pink and fluffy. Yeah.
Pink and fluffy.
Fluffy. Yeah.
But actually, it's much more than that, because human beings, in my experience anyway, they do really well if they are challenged, if they have opportunities to grow, but in a supported way, then they really start to thrive and do well. Yeah, and that obviously.
Yeah, and I think those can just be little things. It can be little things. It can just be allowing people the autonomy to make some decisions for themselves, that they don't always have to ask someone else. They're not always directed what to do. It's giving them a choice of 2 paths. You can do this, asking their opinion on what path we think we should take, rather than telling them this is what we have to do. So it doesn't need to be major things. It doesn't need to be like allowing your new admin clerk to run the organisation. It's not that. And I think sometimes in business people get a bit worried about that, and they get a bit, what are you asking me to let people do what they want? No, we're not asking you to do that, but we are asking you to give them some choice in what they do, or giving them options that they can fit into. And that makes a big difference than somebody who comes in every day to work and just does the same thing over and over again because they're told to.
Yes. Yeah. So
it's a feeling. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
It's that feeling of belonging and having an impact on the organisation and actually making a difference to the company you work for. Yeah. It's that gives people that feeling of, I belong here and I'm doing something worthwhile.
Yes, yeah. Being really aware of your purpose, your part within the organisation, and it being vital. We want to be, we want to be needed. We want to have a purpose to be there and to show up. So I really like that. So, what are the things, perhaps in your experience, in your work, or perhaps in your experience from supporting other HR professionals, that really work? I mean, you've mentioned one thing just now, something very little that can have a really large impact. But are there any
Yeah.
other things that you would say, well, these are, you know, if you do nothing major, you know, a small change?
Yeah, I think the small change is talking to people and listening to them. It's, you know, weekly meetings with everybody there that don't necessarily have a business focused agenda, which is obviously, we quite often don't ever meet with our staff unless it's to discuss a particular point or an issue. Usually it's an issue. We're going to get everybody together because there's a problem here. It's getting people together to talk about how they're doing, you know, how their week's going, discussing, you know, I have an open forum with my staff where we have a Friday morning meeting, and that the agenda in that meeting is never to do with what's happening in the workplace. It's never to do with our workload. It's always to do with how is everybody. You know, I do things like, I steal it from, because you were on GBC this morning, I steal it from the guys on GBC who do this like Friday one word feeling thing. We do things like that, you know, how is everybody feeling today? And we go around the room and talk about how everybody's feeling. And I know people will say, oh, that's pink and fluffy stuff, but it's not. It's giving an opportunity for everybody in the room and everybody who works together as a team to understand how everybody else is feeling, and to understand that maybe there's somebody in that room that's actually going through quite a hard time at the moment, and they need the team support. And I've created what I think is a safe environment to do that.
I really
which
like
removes that stigma.
Yeah, I really like that, because what it does is it allows the people around us to be aware of what's going on for the people in your team. So if someone might be a bit short or a bit more direct or a bit more whatever, we understand. We don't take things personal. So in a way, what I'm hearing, it might really avert any issues from occurring.
Yes.
And
yes,
really,
because everybody knows what's happening. Yeah,
and allows people to perhaps even go an extra step further and support one another.
Exactly. And the other thing I find with that approach is that some of the people in the team who may not be the most vocal normally are the ones who sort of disappear into the background, that we don't hear from them because they're just naturally introverts and they don't put themselves forward. In that environment, they have the opportunity to speak. Some of them have told me that to start with, they were a bit uncomfortable with it. But as the time has gone on, I can see they're more relaxed into it and more happy to share, because it is a safe environment to do it, and that's made a difference. So I'm not losing people in my team that wouldn't normally come and say, you know, there are some people who say what they think, you know, and that's great. There are other people who don't, because they're introverts by now and they don't want to put themselves forward. So it's creating a different environment. So I think it's a little thing. I've had really good feedback from the team since we started doing that. And it helps open up the conversations and remove stigma when people are having issues, I think. Yeah, amazing. Well, that's a really nice, neat thing, a lovely thing to take away for people listening to this, and easily implemented. It doesn't require a huge budget or huge organization, etc. No cost, zero cost.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Apart from when people bring Shiro in the morning, there's a little bit of a cost to that, but that's it, no other cost. Yeah,
I like that, because there is so much that can be done in the way, in not necessarily in changing what we do, but changing how we do things, and how we have conversations and how we engage with one another. That can go such a long way. It doesn't require a huge strategy and a program, etc. Although you know, there's a place for that, but
there is, without a doubt. And I think sometimes in Gibraltar, especially because we've got some of the big gaming companies who are very good at doing events in their organizations for people. You know, they do, we all bring pizza in one Friday and they do all that. And some of the people who don't work in those organizations think, well, my company's not doing those things for me. But it doesn't need that. It doesn't need that big spend. It's great that those organizations are doing it, and it creates this sense of belonging community in their organization, but it doesn't need that. You can do it in much, much smaller ways. Things like, when somebody's starting in your organization, have a buddy, for want of a better word, but somebody that is their go-to person. We often fail in looking after people's well-being right at the start of their journey in a company. You know, when somebody comes in and they feel lost, and, we miss out things like telling them where the toilets are, telling them where they can get coffee and tea, all the basic things that people need. And then you could have somebody who's an introvert sitting there and doesn't want to ask. If we miss those things, we could actually lose that person. And it's a small thing, but you give them a one person that they can make a connection with, that they don't feel scared to ask those questions, and they embed themselves in much quicker, and you're less likely to lose them down the line. And you're starting off on a really good note, that you're looking after their well-being right from the day that they walk through the door.
Yes, you're setting the tone of,
Yeah,
we're a team, we're working together, we're supporting one another, etc. So I
yes,
really
yes,
like that. I really like that.
yeah,
And one thing I wanted to ask is because so a lot of my work is one-on-one with people, and it's always confidential. And so often what happens, not often, but sometimes what happens, people bring things to their session, to their coaching session, that are related to their personal life.
yes,
And I mean, the way I see it is that there is no way of separating it, because you know, our life, whether it's work or personal, will affect one another. So actually,
yes,
it can be really helpful to, provide support, even if it is
yeah,
personal, and
yeah,
to the company it
yeah,
may look like, well, why should I pay for this?
yeah,
But
yeah.
ultimately, how I see it is, it has an impact on how
It does.
well people do at work. And
Yeah,
what's your view and
yeah.
what's your experience of that?
Yeah, I think I grew up, yeah, much older than you. I grew up in a time when people were told to leave your personal life at the door.
Mm.
And any manager in any organization who thinks that's a possibility is kidding themselves, because nobody can leave their personal life at the door. We spend as much time at work probably as we do at home with our families. So the two things are going to naturally impact on one another. So if you can support an employee through difficult times personally, whether it's their health, whether it's family issues, whatever else, then one, the employee is going to for that, and you've been that connection, and the employee is going to understand that you're taking care of them, and you have a loyal employee, then an employee who feels that my organization actually cares for me, which is a difference than somebody just going through the motions. And I think it's really important. We do a lot of work, and we do a lot of stuff with the CIPD that talks about this sort of thing and supporting people. And I've always been an advocate for we need to support people through their personal stuff. So if that's, they've got an elderly parent they're caring for, if they've got a child that has special needs and they've got issues, if they're just going through a bad time, they could be going through a divorce, all of those things, we have to acknowledge that that's happening and make allowances for people. And we sit down and we have conversations that are, what can we do to help you? That's the question. Don't assume you know what they need. Sit down and say, what can we do to help you through this? And you make temporary allowances for somebody. You can change their working hours, you can change the work they do. And there's so many things that you can do. You can send them to occupational health if that's going to be a help, because they may need some other support that we can't see. There are so many things you can do, but you have to support them. And a temporary change to somebody's work life isn't going to have a huge impact. If you've got a very small business, it may be more difficult. I understand that, but generally you can make those allowances without it being the end of the world and being a big deal. And I think for the employee you're doing that for, it has huge benefit, but it also has huge benefit to the other employees, because they can see that somebody's supported. So they understand that when it's their turn, when they're having a hard time, they can rely on the company they work for to take care of them.
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that might come up for companies or people that perhaps don't have such a well-rounded view around well-being at work.
Yeah.
One thing that might come up is, so where does the responsibility, and I use the word responsibility loosely here, where does the responsibility of the employer, of the company start, and where does it end?
Yeah, I get that question a lot from line managers working in HR. And I think we're not babysitters. We're not responsible for people's childcare arrangements, for example. But if somebody is having a temporary problem and we can make the adjustments to help them, then our responsibility still lies there. We have responsibilities to one another as human beings, first and foremost. No matter what else is going on, we have a responsibility to treat human beings the way we would want to be treated ourselves. And that's usually the answer I gave. It's like, how would you want to be treated in this circumstance? How would you want us to help you if it was you that was going through what this individual is going through? And that usually changes the reflection. We can't do everything for somebody. We can't pay somebody's mortgage, we can't pay their debts, we can't, that we can't do. We can help direct them to a financial advisor who could help them with those debts, to government organizations that may be able to help with the issues that we haven't. We can make connections for them and we can help them do that. Because often as employers, we have connections that the individual may not have. You know, we work in business, we have a network of people that we may be able to direct the person to. So we're not solving their problems for them. What we're doing is giving them a space in which they can do that without worrying that they're going to lose their job in the process. Because when somebody's going through a hard time, the last thing they need is, and on top of this, I'm going to lose my job because I can't come to work, or because I have to work reduced hours. So we need to take that part of it away from them and let them resolve their problems themselves. So we're not resolving their issues for them. What we're doing is giving them the space in which they can do that on a temporary basis, and we review it. You know, one of the questions I get a lot from line managers is, but if I give that to this one, everybody's going to ask for the same. And my answer is always, everybody's circumstances are not the same. So if somebody else is coming and asking you to do exactly for them what you've given to this other individual, if their circumstances are identical, then yes, you can consider that. If they're not, then the answer is no, I'm sorry. You know, your circumstances are not the same. And if that person has different issues, let's discuss those issues with them. But we can't shy away from helping somebody because we're scared that everybody's going to want the same conditions.
Yeah.
Because that's just that. Yeah.
I like that. And there's two things I'm hearing that stand out, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one is, it's really about the individual. It's looking at the individual, at the individual situation, and dealing with it in a way of, well, what would be the best way of dealing with this, rather than looking to this is our policy, and you fit in there, but you don't fit in here. So very individual. And the other thing I'm hearing is, which I really like, and I think is so important, is to support people to find their solutions and create their solutions. So it's not doing it for people and solving it for them, but providing a support that empowers them to you know, create their own solutions and create their own future, rather than being a victim. And exactly. We'll do it for you, we'll fix it for you.
Exactly. So that's the question when people are saying, but where does our responsibility end, start and finish? And that's the answer. It's because we're not responsible for them. What we just need to do is help them do that, and help them give them the space to do it for themselves. So we're not doing it for them. And you wouldn't be helping someone by doing it for them anyway. No. We have to allow people to grow and develop it and do it. So we can't, you know, we're not there to hold somebody's hand through every stage of their life. That's not the employer's responsibility. But it's back to the fact that, you know, in life, you know, we are all human beings, and we all at some point in our life have times that are low and bad. And really what you want there is for people to help you. And I know I have got very strong memories of things that have happened to me in my working life. And they're either where an employer has treated me really badly, or they're where an employer has helped me when I've really needed it. And those two things stick with you. Yeah. And they're very strong, and, you know, and they will make a difference in whether you want to continue working there. They'll make a difference in how you are when you're at work, because some people will stay. Some people that you've treated badly will stay in your organization. But what are you getting from the person that you treated badly when they're staying in your organization? And that's not good for anyone. It's not good for them, and it's not good for you.
Yeah, it will affect the whole organization potentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
One last question, and I'm going to ask you this question because you said on a Friday you have this team meeting where you really look at, you know, how is everyone, and one thing that comes up for me there is, so when we have those sort of conversations, how do you acknowledge your own personal vulnerability as a human being when talking about well-being, whilst also maintaining your role as a leader?
I think maintaining my role as a leader is being honest with them. It's being honest with them and acknowledging that I'm a human being the same as they are, and I have really good days and I have really bad days. So I share the same as my team do, and I will tell them when I'm having a bad time and what's about. It doesn't change their perception of me as their leader. They know that I'm the person that's running the department. They know that I'm the person they come to when they've got issues, and I think it does the opposite. I think it makes them more likely to want to talk to me because they can see that I'm a human being, and I'm not pretending not to be, and I'm not pretending that I've got it all together all of the time, because I don't. And, you know, we can't be. And in order to be a good leader, people need to see that you have vulnerabilities the same as they do. Yeah. And we can't pretend to be all knowing. You know, there's nothing worse than a leader who won't admit to being wrong and won't admit to not knowing the answer to something. You know, I readily admit when somebody wants an answer from me that I don't have, and I will say, I don't know, but I am going to find out for you. And I think that's appreciated. I think we can't tend to know all. We can't, it just doesn't do anybody any good. And I think my staff are more likely to come and say, I'm having issues, if they know that I am too. And I share that with them.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, that's the thing that a lot of leaders need to acknowledge, that they can do that without it making people think badly of them.
Yeah. So really it's that, that honesty and transparency and acknowledging where we
absolutely.
are right now isn't a weakness.
Yes.
In actual fact, it's a strength that allows us to bring people together and lead them as a team and support one another. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And it's not something everybody feels comfortable doing. So it's something people need to work towards doing.
Yeah.
And if you a manager who's always been quite standoffish suddenly appears in the office one day and decides to declare everything that's going on in his life may scare people off a little bit.
Yes.
So you need to do that. So you need to do that gradually. You just can't launch in and say, "Come on, I'm going to tell you all about my life today," because that might terrify people. But you have to build up to that and just change the way you approach your staff. And do it gradually if it's something you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to give our whole life story or all the details of it. It might be very we can quite easily leave the story outside, but just actually talk about, well, this is where I am today, without giving the background information.
Yeah. And it's good because sometimes the team are overwhelmed by the workload, and it's good to tell them that you're also overwhelmed by the workload, but this is what we're going to do about it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's all right for them to hear that you're also struggling, but I think they need to hear you're saying, but we're doing something about it, and this is what I'm working on to alleviate that. So they don't need the whole reason that I might be feeling overwhelmed, but they do need to know that I can sometimes feel overwhelmed at the work too. You're not on your own, And sometimes, I think people see their leaders and their managers as somebody who's got it all together and is doing everything perfectly, so they feel a bit inadequate. And it's good to make them understand that that's not the case. But I think we do have to be very careful that we are offering solutions at the same time, and not just saying, "Oh, it's all a disaster." And then people would lose faith in you then. So you can't do that,
Yeah, and it would add to the difficulty because now there is an added worry of, well, my leader's not knowing what to do. But actually, it is difficult. We're going through a difficult time or a very busy time or whatever it is. But this is what we're doing, is how we're approaching it, and we can do this together, etc.
Yeah, and I know, for me, it comes very naturally, and for some people it doesn't. So they need to learn a different way of approaching people, and that can be difficult. So people need to do that and gradually, and get some help to do it. You talk to a life coach, talk to somebody who can help you. Just make those little changes that will make your team understand that you're there for them and you've got their interests at heart. We have to show an interest in people. They're human beings with lives and issues and problems, and we have to acknowledge that. If we don't do that, why are we doing this at all?
Yes. I mean, I could talk to you all day, and there's so many more questions I have around, the future and technology and all of that, but we might have to leave that for another time, because I know you're very busy and you've got a dash. But so thank you so much for taking the time.
It's been lovely talking to you, Cass.
And hopefully it's valuable for the people listening to it.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
Nice to talk to you. Bye.
Bye.